Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where we sit down with the people who give shape, texture, and voice to life on the North Fork of Long Island. Some are rooted here by generations, others arrived by chance or choice, but all carry with them a piece of the story. We talk about what's changing, what's worth holding on to, and the currents of history, both quiet and loud, that run through this place. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 136, we sit down with Supervisor Al Krupski for a special year in review episode. Supervisor Krupski reflects on his first year in office, from the hotel development moratorium to public safety, affordable housing efforts, to beach erosion and zoning reform. We cover the major decisions and challenges that shaped 2024. Supervisor Krupski shares his insights on balancing growth with preservation, improving infrastructure, protecting the environment, and navigating Southold's evolving identity from a rural farming town to a retirement destination under mounting development pressure. We also discuss the budget, the role of Community Preservation Fund dollars, and his hopes for the future. So I hope you enjoy episode 136 with Supervisor Al Krupski. This episode was recorded July 10th, 2025. Thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. It's nice to have you back on today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Definitely. And I wanted to do somewhat of like a year in review since we've had you on over a year ago, and talk about some of the accomplishments and things you've been working on. But I guess just looking back now over your first year, what are you most proud of in terms of even some accomplishments so far?
I think we've made progress in a lot of different arenas, and that's one thing about this job, is that it's not one thing. It's a lot of different things. So I'd be happy to talk about a lot of different things. And there's a lot of things that are ongoing and continue to be ongoing. A lot of our personnel challenges, people, retiring and needed to be, you need to find competent people to fill those positions. So it's a lot of this is just ongoing work that has, because I have a lot of good people to work with, has been working out rather well.
Yes. And what do you have one particular?
I think so I'll pick one thing out of the air. Housing, I think, has been. I think we are making progress, and I've built on a lot of the work that had been done prior to me taking office as supervisor. There was the town passed the community housing fund, which is an extra 0.5% on every real estate transfer. And so the town, because the town has a little bit of money, we're able to help to subsidize some affordable housing projects. But that sounds good when you say it fast. But what happened a couple of years ago, the town formed a housing advisory committee. There was another group or task force that came up with a housing plan that we needed to do required by law in order to have this fund. And then there's also a community housing advisory board that helps to administer this fund. And so setting all that up took quite a few years. Where in the past year we've been very busy setting that up. We've just hired someone that's going to start next week to work in a quote-unquote housing department now, because there's a lot of administrative work that goes along with this. So we had, I didn't start from scratch. I used the framework that had been developed, and people had worked very hard, both town staff and elected officials and volunteers, to get to that point. And now we're going to develop it into an actual housing program where we can try to, create some affordable housing. And
are there any projects in the works within the next year? Or
Well, we are working one that is in redevelopment on Love Lane, and that's for rentals. And the town, we also have a subsidy framework that the town board approved on Tuesday night that sets the limits for rental rates for the apartments and sets the limits for if we do a project similar to the one in Mattituck where there'd be houses on single and separate lots for sale, private ownership, that we would set the price on those units.
Okay. In terms of the long-term effect, is that something that would eventually the people who would move into there, they would...
Yeah, so those would be, so the apartment would be set we'd set that rate every year. And it's based on the HUD, area median income and the HUD numbers. So we take those numbers and then we can adjust them if necessary. But we get really good guidelines. The problem is, the HUD numbers come out for Suffolk County, so there's quite a bit of disparity in Suffolk County in income. So we are conscious of that. As far as the home ownership, then you're looking at a range of people. We want it to be first-time home buyers. We don't want someone to have sold their home for a really high value and then
move in there,
take advantage, move into Southold town at a very low rate.
Yeah.
And it is an equity model where if you do qualify, because you have to make so much money, of course, to pay the mortgage, and you really should be a first-time homeowner. If you qualify for those things and move in, your the amount that you have equity that you gain is not on the open market. It is based on other variables that are very limited, so that it is affordable in perpetuity. So you can't just sell it on the open market. You have to sell it back to someone who qualifies as a homeowner under those same parameters that you bought it as, and your equity does not go up with the open market.
Yes,
it is still equity, but it's not free range after that, because the town had approved a number of affordable housing projects years ago. After I think 5 years, they went on the open market, and they were no longer affordable. So it really defeated the purpose, because we need that affordability here in perpetuity.
Yes. And then I wanted to ask, I think you had the decision this year with the hotel development moratorium. What prompted that move, and what feedback have you received from residents and business owners?
I think we just, because we're in the middle of this zoning update, and it's something else I inherited when we started, and I think it was a really good process. It's taken quite a bit longer than anticipated. I thought that was something we would have voted on this past March and been done with. But it's taken a lot longer. It's certainly chewed up a lot of staff time in town hall. We have gone out to the community, I'd say about a dozen times on the draft proposal from the consultant. There were a lot of things in it that the community was uncomfortable with, some of the changes. So the hotel moratorium is kind of based on the fact that we're looking at the uses for, among other things, hotels in all the zones that they had been previously approved for. So if a hotel was listed in your zoning, you could have applied for under certain conditions. So we're looking at what those conditions are and how appropriate hotel use would be there now in 2025 versus when it was originally put in. So there might be some changes to that. There might not be. We're not sure how the final draft is going to come out based on the comments that we've received. So
just waiting on the zoning update.
Well, we're waiting for the planning department. We still have 2 more meetings. We're waiting to the planning department to come up with the kind of they're doing an analysis of the comments we received. So there's the current zoning, there's the draft which recommends changes, but it's not like we're going to choose one or the other. We're going to base with the comments we got are mostly on the draft. Some were on the current zoning. And so how can we make those adjustments working between the two so that it's not A or B? It's going to be something quite different when we're done. And a lot of it's making things consistent in the code. not related to the hotel use, but related to other things. There's a lot of inconsistencies that got put into the code over the years in different sections. So we're trying to clean up the code to make it flow a lot better.
But you don't think like in going into 2026 there could be another moratorium on hotels or even broader developments?
Oh, I hope not. I hope we get things straightened out during this draft because we've had so much good public comment. I really think there's a real opportunity for making changes that the community is comfortable with, and including the business community. That changes that could benefit them.
Yeah.
Because we know that's an important component out here. So we don't just continue the moratorium indefinitely.
Yes. And also, in terms of transportation, it always remains a challenge on the East End with limited public transit options. Are there any plans within the town of Southold to improve connectivity for residents or workers?
So yesterday there was the Long Island Association breakfast, and the 5 East End supervisors were on the panel. And it's something that when we get together we talk about quite a bit is transportation. There's a lot of the reality is we live in a culture that everybody wants a car. So because you want a car, you want to have the independence. And it's been as a former county legislator, I know that the Suffolk bus system is very underused. You see the empty buses going by quite a bit on the East End because the convenience of a car versus the convenience of waiting for a bus are quite different. So if you can get a license, that's what happened. Most people got licenses, and the bus ridership it's very underutilized. Suffolk did they called it reimagining. They tried to review the whole system countywide because it's very expensive. I think the county's subsidizing it to the tune of about $100 million a year. The riders don't subsidize much of it at all. And so how do you get people to become riders is still a bit of a head scratcher, I think.
And even connectivity with I guess it would be probably more the summer months, but the Long Island Railroad.
The Long Island Railroad, and so what happened is on the South Fork, they advocated for and successfully got some extra trains in the summertime. And that was somewhat of a help. And they have traffic problems over there that are really eclipse ours. However, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to do better here with public transportation.
Yeah.
There were sidings built because of the agricultural industry years ago. You look at Mattituck, Cutchogue, Peconic Station, Southold. There's sidings there. They brought out a lot of it was equipment and goods both ways. It wasn't just the agricultural products going into the city. They brought a lot of lumber out on trains, a lot of other supplies. So rail was very heavily used for freight years ago, enough that there are sidings there. They would have to be rehabilitated, one, and two, the railroad would have to make the commitment to run more trains out this way.
It would be the MTA.
Yes.
That would have to.
Yes, and I've been in meetings with them for literally decades, and it's the chicken or the egg. We say if you ran more trains, people would use them more. They're saying, well, we need more ridership before we spend money to developing more of a system. So they're, which is unfair because we do pay, of course, everyone pays, including the library, into the MTA tax. So everybody's businesses have to pay into the MTA tax. And so we feel like we're paying into a tax that we're not able to really utilize that service.
Yes. And then in terms of preservation for Southold, even historic buildings, are there any efforts made to protect some historic sites or structures from demolition or inappropriate development?
Not by the town.
Oh, okay.
The town has rules about demolition.
Yeah.
But as far as the preservation, that would take place on private property.
What about environmental protection moving forward? Are there progress with the coastal resilience plan?
So the coastal resilience part, we are making good progress now with the county. Years ago, there was a coastal resilience study by Suffolk County only on county-owned infrastructure. And so if you think about, most of the shoreline is privately owned,
Mm-hmm.
and it's regulated by either Southold Town and or New York State DEC.
Mm-hmm.
All the activities on the shoreline. The vulnerable spots owned by municipalities are generally parks or beaches, and in our case, roadways.
Mm-hmm.
Because of our elevation, they could be prone to flooding during big storm events, and then traffic would be cut off.
Mm-hmm.
So, working with the county years ago, if you look, the county infrastructure in town is the County Road 48 here, and so there's a couple low spots, one by Mattituck Inlet and
Mm-hmm.
one by Town Beach. And I've been working closely with County DPW to put in their capital plan. They put in, and I think we're going to get a presentation by the county legislator and the county DPW coming up at a work session
Mm-hmm.
to elevate those sections of road,
Okay.
because it's really interstate commerce at that point, and it's also a real safety issue. You need a dry road during a major storm event.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with Town Beach. And I don't know if you noticed this winter, there were big piles of sand piled up in the parking lot.
Yes.
And the town DPW and the town highway department kept dropping off piles of sand that was compatible for the beach all winter long. DPW was poised to spread it right before Memorial Day, so we would have some semblance of beach there in the summertime. They spread the sand right before Memorial Day. There was one day where the wind was a little stiff out of the northwest. All that sand disappeared in one day. And so now if you go to the beach there, there's not much beach, and there's a drop off. And that's why they put those big driftwood logs there to prevent people from driving over the edge accidentally or backing over the edge. So as far as coastal resilience there, we're trying to maintain some semblance of beach, knowing that the road has to be elevated in that spot because that's one of the low spots.
Yeah.
So that's something that's in the works and will happen in our lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the other infrastructure that we have, the town, we are coming up with a map of town-owned roads
Mm-hmm.
that flood on a regular basis, and we're going to try to address those and try to prioritize like where we're going to spend that money.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to Town Beach, we are working with Long Island Sound group to get some funding to do some sort of a vegetated berm there to try to preserve that beach and protect that parking lot and still provide for public access.
Mm-hmm.
So that's ongoing. Those plans are ongoing right now. As far as other roads that are in our town that aren't ours, aren't the town's,
Mm-hmm.
the State Road 25 is low in a couple spots coming through. But if you look at between Southold, Hamlet, and all the way to Greenport Village, all the way through Heshamamick, it's very low.
Mm-hmm.
And we are, right now, we've set up a meeting engaging our state elected officials, Senator Palumbo, Assemblyman Giglio, and Schiavone.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to start with them. We're going to say, look, the state road, there's also traffic safety improvements that we'd like to have them review and have the traffic engineers review as far as crosswalk placement and that sort of thing. But as far as the coastal resiliency part, they really need to look at the elevation of those roads and act like sooner rather than later because it takes so many years to get through the capital plan. And if you look at the circle, the I'm using air quotes, progress on the circle here in Greenport. That was probably started 10 years ago. The discussions on that were probably started 10 years ago.
And now it's
there's finally some work being done there.
Yes.
And so if you need to start these discussions and get people on board and get your partnerships together, because all those state roads or county roads and town roads, they all intersect with other municipalities. They need to work together on their intersections. How does drainage going to be affecting the property owners alongside those roads if they're elevated? It's a lot of complicated engineering. You need to start those discussions and and then secure, come up with a plan, an engineering plan, and then secure the funding, and then go to contract on the actual work itself.
Yes,
So
definitely. And then you also had, I think, in August 2024, the town established a beach erosion mitigation task force. Is that still like progress being made that way on that task force?
No, that was based on that beach there, and I think
Okay.
I think we're again making progress on that. That is a much smaller project. The other
Okay.
beaches, and some of our beaches are road ends, and some are disappearing due to sea level rise and erosion. Some actual beaches, I remember decades ago, if you look at Kenny's and McCabe's beaches, they were just about disappearing. And now they've accreted sand, and they've got beautiful big beaches there with good elevation. Mother Nature, it's hard to figure Mother Nature. So we try to do the best we can and work within our limitations in government. And a lot of these projects, you have to work with our partners in the DEC also. And a good example of that would be Mattatuck Inlet. The Army Corps of Engineer is doing some dredging there, and it's maintenance dredging at the mouth. The sand is compatible to beach nourishment, so this beach nourishment sand is going to go to the west on Bailey's Beach, which is owned by Mattatuck Park District. So the Park District is going to benefit from that sand and all the residents who are in the Park District. But that's just maintenance work that's ongoing.
And then also, I think it was last year, you had a joint meeting with the Riverhead Town people. How did that go overall? And was that hard to plan and get everyone together?
No, those meetings are good, and I think meetings with other municipalities are always helpful because we're all part of the East End supervisors and mayors. I do get to meet with the other supervisors on a pretty regular basis. There's also Suffolk County Supervisors Association. We meet with those supervisors on a regular basis. As far as the meeting with other towns, I think it's really important. You need to have that. And we're going to have, we met yesterday, 5 of us, and you're going to have disagreements on some things, but you're going to have consensus on others. We're all one region here surrounded by Peconic Bay. And we all have unique challenges, but we're better working together. And also from a regional approach, then we can bring in our state elected officials on a much more effective level. Instead of saying, well, we need to fix this one intersection, it's hard to get everybody's attention, versus saying we need to address this on a regional level. It can be a lot more effective.
Yeah, and I think even with Riverhead specifically, what's going on over there can affect us and vice versa.
Incredibly, yeah. Sound Avenue, I think there's 15 or 16,000 cars a day. There's so much traffic. So anything that happens on Sound Avenue affects us. A lot of people live in Riverhead and work in Southold, or live in Southold and work further west, and they're using that corridor as just as a roadway. They don't live on it, but they use it as a roadway to commute, and you have to be mindful of all that traffic.
And even with, I think when you were on last time, you talked about when you first got on the trustees and then the board, but there's always been pressure, even in the 80s and 90s, with development. But do you continue to see that being pressure on the town of Southold as you move forward, and how do you balance that? And
there's a tremendous amount of development pressure here still in town, and the reason is that I think the town's done a good job for a long time on their planning efforts and keeping the town, keeping a rural character. I got that yesterday. I had 2 meetings out of town, and a lot of people that visit us say the same thing. Oh, you've got such a nice town. We find it so quiet there. You're not overwhelmed with traffic. And so we've kept ourselves as a desirable place. So then you do have a lot of people with either second homes or retirees who'd like to be here. And I'll go into the public safety aspect of that later. But and a lot of it has to do with traffic. So a lot of it has to do with land preservation because you do mitigate the noise and the light pollution and the traffic as you preserve land.
Yes, definitely. And then I know we touched on housing a bit, but even with zoning changes, the accessory dwelling units, how did those changes, or how is that going to aim to address some of the housing issues?
So the original accessory dwelling unit law was passed almost 20 years ago. I was on the board then, and there was a lot of interest in if you had an older family member with a big house that they weren't using all of it, you could put in a legal apartment in that house for a younger family member. And then you have to provide a permit to make sure it's either a family member or somebody on the affordable housing list. We didn't want to just see 2-family homes. We didn't want to see it rented out for the summer for somebody. We want to see it actually providing a housing need, especially for workforce housing. So we wanted to be regulated. It had to be owner occupied, so that you had it wasn't just going to be a 2-family rental and you didn't know who was living there, or they might not be working in town. So then that's what you want, is to provide workforce housing for people in town. And you had to go through the building department because it had to be safe. You had to have your proper, all your safety things, CO2 and fire suppression if need be, but fire alarms and all those things. And so you're up to standard with New York State building code in relation to all that, egress and all that. So that was not heavily used. We thought that was going to be we'd be able to legitimize a lot of apartments and have a lot more apartments. Again, for family members, they could help with the maintenance of a home, or help pay with taxes and insurance for the other generation, and share all that housing burden. That was not heavily used for whatever reason. It also includes an ADU with more or less the same conditions on a separate building on site, a garage or a shed or a barn or something, where you could put a unit in there. That requires zoning board of appeals approval, because now you're going to change the character of the neighborhood, and you're going to have a bigger impact. Instead of having people living in a house, which you already have, it's less of an impact than people living in a house and also living in the barn.
Yes.
So, and that's been used somewhat. So the changes that we made really related to the time when that outbuilding was built, that you didn't, originally there was a long period of time that you had to wait it. It was changed to 3 years, and now it's down to 0. Again, we want to make sure that the people living there are, we want it to be workforce housing or to help a family. We don't, it goes to my point of traffic and all the people who commute in and out of town to work. If you can mitigate that, if you take cars off the road and people live in town, there's a great benefit, because if they live in town and work in town, they will have time to, maybe they'll volunteer for coach Little League, maybe they'll volunteer at the library, and so
the fire department.
The fire department, of course. Then they'll be part of the community. If you're spending time commuting, you just don't have that time. That time is gone from that day every day.
Yes. And then you also touched on the zoning updates, and there's been a lot of meetings throughout the town. How's that going so far, and what do you see as what do you think some of the residents are most focused on with that? Is it more that preserving or making sure the new zoning changes keep with the town's character?
I think that's exactly what it is. They want to make sure that the character is intact. Some of the changes that came out in the draft were troublesome because they removed certain uses from businesses, and it's hard enough to run a business as it is, and so we're very concerned about some of the language in the drafts. Because we know local businesses are critically important and it goes back to community. there's so many community events and fundraisers and things, and who supports those? The local businesses support all those things.
Yes.
In a big way. So we want to make sure we support local businesses and don't take away some of their equity and or options for the future.
Yes.
And there's also what we heard from, there's a lot of businesses, not a lot, but there's some businesses that are established and have been for a long time, but they're not on the correct zoning. So they're non-conforming. And I think there's a lot of support for saying, okay, you've got that business use there. It's a tried and true business. And the concern there in the past was, if you went to sell it, could you sell it for that as that use? Or if it burned down, could you reestablish it with that use? And I think we're going to put in there that we'll grandfather these in so that if the use is the same, you can still sell it for that use. Or if it burns down, then you can restore it again to that same use. Because it's existing today. It's part of our community today, so it wouldn't be a change.
Yes. And then I had another question, which I think has been talked about with the Airbnb out here, and just the debate over that, and how's the town balancing property rights with concerns about neighborhood character or housing availability.
Sure. So the Airbnbs, I didn't realize there were that many. We did hire a company that is able to tell us kind of, I think, a shocking amount of information on when they're rented and what times they're rented and for how much. And it's quite illuminating. So we did have an Airbnb, or I should say, a short-term rental task force that made recommendations. There is legislation being drawn up that it's going to be ready for September. We want to make sure that we have enforcement in place, because short-term rental, of course, takes away from the long-term year-round rental for residents opportunities, and that's been a problem. There are very few year-round rentals. So they'd be market rate, but there would still be an opportunity for a year-round rental. And there's a need for that.
Yes.
So that was a result of the Airbnb. Besides, you mentioned the community. There's a lot of community support because it's not allowed. Short-term rental is not allowed use. And so if you live next to one, we've heard a lot of stories about disrupting the neighborhood and having the uncertainty of having someone run that kind of business next to their home and in their neighborhoods.
Yes.
So we're going to roll out a legislation for that in the fall.
Okay.
But we did hire a company to help us with enforcement. And we work closely with New York State Association of Towns, because this short-term rental issue it's an issue in a lot of areas that are very popular for tourists. And they've managed to come in and operate because there is a demand for that rental program. So there's a lot of case law on how these businesses can be regulated. And so we're not going to break any new ground here and say they should be regulated this way or that way. We're going to use existing things that have been decided in the courts as existing tools to regulate.
Yeah, that can be tough, especially with the enforcing part. But also, in terms of just people's property out here and environmental effects, I wanted to touch on we have seen, I think, over the decade or two, we've seen a growing amount of people coming out here with a lot of money. But how does the town ensure laws are enforced fairly, especially with the environment or property restrictions that some might try to bypass through lawsuits or paying fees?
It's no, that's just ongoing.
Yeah.
And you said people who come out here with a lot of money, and I read a book on Sylvester Manor on Shelter Island, and so it's kind of almost like the history of the town. The Sylvesters they traded all over the world. So they operated in the Caribbean and Europe, and they sailed into Peconic Bay. They saw Shelter Island, and they basically said, "We'll take it." It's very nice.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of like the history that still goes on here. People come in here and they say, this is really nice. We'll buy it. We'll take it. And so that's really nothing new to our the way. And if you do keep it nice, people who want to be here can be here.
Yes.
So as far as following the laws, that is always a challenge. Enforcement's always a challenge. We have a part-time fire marshal now to help with different fire code inspections that are necessary. We have, and there was that horrible house fire in a short-term rental in East Hampton where a couple young people got killed a couple of years ago. Kind of as a reminder of things can go bad.
Yes.
And then we also have a part-time code enforcer we just hired who works on weekends and evenings to help with that kind of enforcement. So if we get complaints in, and most of it's complaint driven, if we get complaints in, they can go out on a weekend or an evening and see if the complaints founded or not.
Yeah, because there probably can be like examples of like people just kind of clear cutting.
Or
yes. Like building too close, or maybe building their house bigger than what it.
Yes.
As I think it was that last year, the McMansion type.
The big house law.
Yeah. That's probably a challenge.
And we're trying to see if that's had an impact. I've gotten some mostly positive reports that does have an impact. It's hard to gauge it if you're driving by, because it's based on lot size. So on a small lot, you might notice it, but on a bigger lot, it's going to be less restrictions because it's a bigger lot, so you can have a bigger house. So it's going to look like it didn't have any impact, but it might have.
Yes.
So,
Definitely.
and as far as enforcement as a whole, most of it is complaint driven.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and we're looking at right now another big complaint we're getting. One is lighting. Because we have a dark skies law, which we passed about 20 years ago. And that's easy to enforce because if the light's shining, it's not compliant. It's easy to enforce.
Yes.
And it's easy enough to comply because there's a lot of different fixtures out there that aren't any more expensive than a non-compliant fixture to put on your property.
Yes.
And it's also a good neighbor thing because you hear all those stories about somebody comes out and they change their lighting and they're shining the light in your bedroom every night and they're not even there most of the time, but the lights come on automatically. So that's a matter of enforcement, and we want compliance through education so the enforcement can help with that. And the enforcement really, we would like to direct them towards compliance. Look, this is illegal. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, well, we'll give you so many days. You have to comply. This is how you have to comply.
Yes.
We'd rather see that sort of thing happen so people understand. And as far as the noise complaints go, we're looking at the other towns have really strict noise codes, especially in relation to amplified music. So we're starting to review all those things too, because we passed a noise code years ago too. Noise is a lot more difficult to enforce, and a lot of it has to do with wind direction and timing, and the suggestion was made that maybe amplified music should go off by a certain time period, which would make it easy to enforce, because if it has to go off at a certain time, it's off. It's either on or not on. Can I hear it? Is it loud? Is it so many decibels? It doesn't matter. It's amplified music crossing the property line. So we're looking at all those things. That's something that we're just embark on.
Okay. And then also, I think you've touched on it even at a different time, but just Southold becoming more of the demographics have changed somewhat, becoming more of a retirement community. And are you concerned that this shift could impact the town's long-term vitality, particularly when it comes to sustaining a strong school system or supporting a year-round business?
That's where the challenge is. And because the retirement community that comes out here, there's a great benefit to the community because they have time to volunteer for things. They usually come with a deal of interest in different facets of our community, whether it is, a town committee or the library or a Custer Institute or something like that. So they bring all this worldly experience and the time to help with those sort of endeavors. So they're a huge benefit to our community in that respect.
Yes.
To your point, though, the school system, the enrollments dropped quite a bit. At what point does the school which makes up 70% of our property tax, make that adjustment to say, oh, we do have to adjust to it was declining enrollment, and in my lifetime with my children, my son graduated with less students in his grade than I did from Mattituck. 4 and 5 years later, his sisters graduated with way more students than it was a big spike in a few years of enrollment of his class or my class, and now it's down to about half that amount. It went from about 150, I think this year's, from Mattituck's graduating class was 80. So when does the school make that, because the school is such a big part of our tax bill, when does the school make that, how do they make that adjustment towards really our facilities and our programming is really going to be based on a stable population of that many students. So I think that's the reality. And it does tie into the full-time volunteerism. You mentioned the fire department, and the full-time volunteerism and activities in the community for other things, as well as, to your point, supporting a year-round business.
Yes,
it was hard to believe that Greenport Village couldn't support a hardware store. That was kind of a shock because. You go to the hardware store for everything all the time.
Yes.
And I think a lot of it has to do with the online shopping, the convenience of having everything delivered to your doorstep every morning.
Yes.
I think I think that really plays into the reality of that makes it harder to do business also year round, because that just cuts into part of their business. And if you eliminate a certain percentage of foot traffic that day, they would have bought something else.
Yes. No, that's a challenge. I've had people on from Greenport that some wish wished we'd have a hardware store back again, but I don't know. It's just changing.
It's a big change.
Period. Yeah.
Yeah. The one went out of business in Cutchogue. So we have one in Mattituck and we have one in Southold that stock everything. But to see that as an economic reality, because it's a business and you have to hire people and you have to have everything. You need everything in that business, right? And so it's a complicated, like any business, it's complicated.
Yes, but even I guess for school systems, it could, in terms of what they have to do, if they would ever want to consolidate in the future, but attracting young families out here that would be out here year round, that's probably a challenge. And then, but even families that are already out here, that have been out here a long time, keeping their children to stay out here in the future is a challenge. And do you see that people moving away too with that, with the young children graduating high school? Yeah,
I think you have to. I think the high schools need to be clear on, if you want to stay in this area, you need to get an education that's going to be kind of focused on your job opportunities out here, because there are quite a few good job opportunities out here, but certainly not everything. So you have to be able to say, okay, I would like to get a job in this sector or that industry or that business, and then if you focus on that, there are opportunities.
Yes.
Town government, we hire people all the time.
Yeah, that's very good salaries.
And benefits.
Yes.
Very good benefits.
Yes.
That's one of our challenges. We're working on the budget for 2026 now, and our healthcare costs are extraordinary for employees. And that's one of the benefits of working in the public sector, is you get healthcare benefits.
Yes.
And
I actually was going to ask, speaking of the 2025 budget, you've had to increase for the tax levy 7.48 and then 6.94 for property tax. Were like necessary increases for, was that with employee?
Well, it's everything. And one of the problems was the year before the tax, even though all of the expenses went up, contractual expenses with employees, healthcare went up, and everything, all the other expenses, there was a 0% tax increase. So that we kind of felt the burden of that in this year's taxes, and that we had to make up that gap. And it was an honest budget, but it didn't reflect the reality of honest accounting wise, but didn't reflect the reality of all these labor contracts go up every year. Healthcare costs go up every year. The cost of a truck in the highway yard goes up every year. The cost of any kind of equipment. We have a good workforce. They do a lot of the work in-house. We do a lot of work on town buildings, but the material costs go way up. So everything that you look at has gone way up this year, and that's got to be reflected in the service. So then you look at the budget and you look at, well, we have so much on payroll. Are there services that we're offering that maybe are maybe they're an artifact? Maybe we don't need to offer those services, or if we do, we have to make it clear the budget that there's a tax increase because we're offering these services that people are using and appreciating.
Yes.
One of the things that we get asked a lot by new residents is there's no garbage pickup in Southold, and you can either hire a private company or you could go self-haul yourself to the dump. And sitting in all these supervisor meetings, these towns that have garbage districts, and so it's automatically put on your tax bill, a lot of the contracts are coming in like 30% higher this year because of the cost of the carters. It's normal, and then you have to pass those costs on, but that's baked into your tax bill. You don't have an option of going yourself or not.
Yes.
So you have to be careful when you start providing services that they become they're still valid. They're still necessary. Or are there areas you could cut back and say we don't really need to pay? And I'm big on reducing payroll through attrition, not just cutting. If we're going to start cutting different areas, you don't want to start firing people, because that's very disruptive.
Yes.
That's the worst case scenario.
But going into the 2026 budget, do you see there being even a slight increase, or it just depends for the taxes?
There will guarantee be some sort of increase just because of our obligations to our labor contracts, inflation on everything else that we have to buy. So There will definitely be an increase, and I think a lot of that was reflected in raising fees as you go along, gradually based on real accounting of our costs, versus saying, oh, we're never going to raise that fee, and then all of a sudden it's really a drag on the budget, and then you have to plug that budget hole from some other source of revenue.
Yes. And then it's been talked about a lot, I think, last year and even this year, the CPF. Could you talk a little bit about that? And I feel like it seems that the town of Southold, it's the main priority right now is to preserve open space, but obviously other people have talked in Greenport and
sure. So there's there's 5 towns that have the Community Preservation Fund. In the beginning, the guidance was it was authorized by New York State, so there's guidance by New York State that we have to follow. The 5 towns all developed different programs. The reality is that 85% of the money that's collected goes to 2 towns, Southampton and East Hampton. So they have quite a different way of managing it than Southold does. And Southold, Shelter Island getting the least. They manage theirs as best they can. Riverhead borrowed heavily against future revenues, so they are paying off their debt with their income right now. So it's really, our program evolved quite differently than the other towns. We could have spent from the beginning quite a bit more on stewardship. We realized that, and there was always development pressure. In the 80s, there was a lot. In the 80s, people forget the price of land doubled in 3 years. There was always a lot of development pressure over time. It's kind of been, there's no dips. It goes up and then there's a plateau, and then it goes up and there's a plateau, and it's been a consistent history of that in my lifetime. And so And we made a conscious decision not to spend a lot of money on stewardship. We just kept buying as parcels came up, and we even had a program for at-risk farmland at one point, separate from the CPF, that was bonded separately, that the public approved the bond. So there was a piece of farmland in Southold. We bought it with that money. We stripped the development rights off. They were left with the preserved land and a house and a barn separate. And then we sold it on the open market to recoup a lot of the money. And so there's other strategies besides CPF for preserving land. We also partner with open space quite a bit with Suffolk County on the purchase price. We partner on Suffolk County, or Suffolk County preserves farms in their own program separate from the town. And their farmland preservation rules are different from the town's. It's the same concept, but the rules are different. And they have their own farmland committee that governs activities on those preserved lands. So the town, we made a conscious decision years ago to focus on land preservation and let the next generation worry about the stewardship of it. So we have a lot of preserved open space that doesn't require almost no stewardship, because we don't have trails there. We don't have even parking lots. They're open to the public, but there's no amenities there. As far as the farmland preservation goes, that's in private hands, so there's no financial responsibility of the town there either. We do have a full-time land preservation director and an assistant, and they monitor what goes on those lands, because public money was spent preserving them. So there is a monitoring program in place that takes place to make sure that land that's been preserved using taxpayer dollars is being used for those purposes. Aside from that, the town went along like that, and the other towns really did advocate for using the money for other purposes. And they were successful in putting those things into law, but it's up to the towns to decide how that money would be spent. And they started with clean water projects, and water improvement projects, rather, water quality improvement. In Southold, we were doing drainage work, which most of the water quality improvement work is drainage work. So, it's two things. One, if you preserve land as open space, you do preserve that environmental integrity, because you're capturing all the rainwater. You don't have septic systems in the ground leaking into your groundwater and then eventually leaking into the bay or the sound. So you're preserving that environmental integrity by land preservation itself.
Yes.
But then where you have existing road runoff, and I don't know if you're familiar with the work the town's doing here at Champlin, they're cutting off, it's right here, they're cutting off all the outfalls into Sterling Creek. And so all that rain today isn't washing all that bacteria, sediment, nutrients, all that isn't being washed directly into the creek. And the aquifer is being recharged, so we're saving our aquifer at the same time. So the town embarked on that as a parallel course. We're funding it this year to a tune of $500,000. It had been $250,000 a year. The town engineer and the town highway superintendent, Dan Goodwin, they wanted to accelerate that because they see all these drainage needs, and they know once the drainage is done there's going to be some maintenance on it. But once the drainage is done, you've solved the problem for flooding. You've solved the problem for washing all those impairments directly into your creeks and bays. So that's been something that the town made a conscious effort not to use community preservation funds for, because we have so many acres of land left, both open space and farmland, that are on the list to be preserved. We didn't want to get sidetracked with other projects. And then there was a great advocacy for using it for historical preservation. The towns that have embarked on those routes, if you're going to buy a facade on something, a historical facade, it's a place where the money never ends. And I know that other towns have bought historical buildings, and then people have to run them and maintain them. And I was in a meeting 2 Decembers ago where they were appealing. They said that we need more money. It's not enough money to run programming and to maintain the buildings and to pay the staff. And so then you're in the business of like almost running little historical societies throughout the town. And again, it's not a bad thing, but the Southold doesn't have that kind of money to. We don't have that kind of money coming in every year, and it's based on transfer tax, and that certainly peaked during COVID, but now it's going back to pre-COVID numbers.
Yes, definitely.
And as far as land preservation goes, there's a lot of opportunities there to preserve more land, but because it's a voluntary program, you need the program in place. You need your land preservation coordinator. You need a town board that's behind it, the program, but you also have to have money. If you come in with a piece of either farmland or open space and say, look, I want to preserve this for whatever reasons, it's either your legacy or your equity, or there's some reason you want to do it. You need to have, we need to say, gee, come back in a year or two. We're not sure if we'll have the money. We don't have the money now. You got to make other plans. You got to move on.
They're going to want to sell it or do whatever else with the property.
Yes, they're doing estate planning or something. So you need to have a program that's functional at that moment when people are ready, because it's a voluntary program. You're not like on a list and we're just going to work down the list.
Yes,
and that's the reality is in the town. We have limited resources. We're happy to work with Greenport on partnership with it, because Greenport's part of the town, but they have to work with us and supply us with the information that we need, because all these parcels have to be on the list.
Yeah.
Greenport as a hamlet has, and even the village, the amount of open space that's been preserved around Greenport Village in Greenport Hamlet is substantial. The benefits there are better air quality every day. Certainly better, light pollution is mitigated, noise pollution is mitigated, and certainly better water quality. The wells that supply Greenport Village are on town land outside of the village. So by preserving open space, you're preserving the water quality, and there's less water treatment for the village residents. So that's a big benefit right there. If the village had been built out, your water supply would definitely be compromised from all that development. And then it's something as simple as saying, well, I can go down to the bay any day I want and go swimming. There's a lot of communities in Suffolk County where you can't. Well, this kind of rainfall will result in beach closures because of pathogen loading from the rainfall. Because we, the town, have been working diligently on the road runoff stormwater projects, the bathing beaches are open, and that benefits the whole community.
Yes.
So,
and then also, I will make sure. Did you wanted to touch on public safety?
Yes. Oh gosh. So, we take it very seriously, and it's a big part of our budget. And it's not just the police department where if you have a problem, the police respond. That's a big part of it, and we have to fund police officers. We have to fund, and you talk about hiring people. So, we have to hire new officers all the time. We had 3 graduated from the academy a couple months ago. We have 1 coming out of the academy this month. We're looking. Someone's retiring. A sergeant's retiring after many good years of service to the town tomorrow. So we get to replace that position, and there's also someone else who's retired. Who retired on Tuesday. We get to replace that position. So we have to make sure that they are equipped, and there's so much technology involved in public safety now. It's kind of it's more than just a radio, and oh my gosh, they have to have proper equipment now. All the car cameras, the body cameras, and all that. Very helpful for the policing and public safety. Very expensive.
Yes.
Holy smokes! All that's so expensive. Because then, if you have that footage, who keeps the footage for how long? Where are we storing it? Who gets the access? You need someone to manage all these technological advances that, while are good and helpful, they have to be paid for. So,
and you even have, I guess it's in the plans with the police department building and the courthouse.
Oh, well, that's another thing. But just as far as the personnel and their equipment, the day-to-day operations, the police cars, the extra traffic control officers for the summertime, it ties into the way it ties into public safety is that people go to an event, and there's a lot of parades in Greenport, and there's a lot of public events all over town. They rely a lot for road closures or traffic control on the police department. And so to coordinate all those things is really a challenge. We came up with a calendar for this year. I think it's worked out well. We can't have people double booking events in town where they require police either protection or police, some sort of police service, because it's just impossible. Police have to still do, God forbid there's a car accident or something, which there are all the time, or some other problem where they get called to. You need to have a fully staffed there to respond to emergencies, not just be there with a couple cones directing traffic.
Yes.
So we came up with a calendar to try to limit the events and spread them out throughout the summer and throughout the year, so that we can adequately staff those. We've also, this is where the collaboration comes in, meeting with Suffolk County and Suffolk County supervisors and Suffolk County Police Commissioner. So I had that meeting with them, and the main concern is traffic control. How do you keep people safe at parades? They're taking extraordinary lengths, looking at worst case scenario, because you have to look at worst case scenarios. And then after what happened down in Louisiana, we had a meeting with Riverhead and Shelter Island. Both police, our emergency management committee met with their supervisors and police chiefs on traffic safety, and how do you do proper traffic. At what point do you stop on a road closure? Someone there with a sawhorse or a cone, versus full barricades, and if you have highway trucks there, parking there, you're paying a lot of overtime now. So there's that to consider. It seems to me too much to ask volunteer fire department. Someone said, well, you brought in the firemen have fire trucks. Well, these are volunteers, so you're asking volunteers to come out and park the fire truck there all day and man the truck. These things, they get very complicated. It's a lot to ask volunteers to do that for every event that we have and every road closure that we have. And you think about every intersection in a parade just here in Greenport, every intersection that has to be armored by police to make sure that nothing bad happens at every single intersection.
Yes.
And so it's very complicated. We spend an awful lot of time, and I think it's time well spent, on planning for these events and making sure that we're considering everything that we should be considering. So that's what I mean by public safety and emergency management. Oh my gosh. It's
a lot.
You see something on TV and on the news that actually happened, and then you think, how should we prepare? Or should we be worried about that, or how should we prepare? And so there's a lot of thought that goes into that.
Yes.
And people should know that. As far as the police station, so the previous town board committed to building a new police station. The one that we have there is considered outdated. So we're going through. They bought a piece of property in Peconic next to the current police station. We're currently, remediating that site, and the town engineer, the past chief and the current chief have been involved, and the police advisory committee have been involved in their in the plans for the department. We want something that's right sized. And it's going to provide public safety
within character of the community.
Within character, it should look nice, but it's got to be right size for the department too.
Yes,
which goes back to so how many officers do we need? Because then it goes back to looking at staffing levels to make sure that it's going to be. We don't want to build it and have it be obsolete in 10 years. On the other hand, we don't want to overbuild it, and then we overbuilt it. The cost of construction has gone through the roof. So we're very conscious of what that's going to look like. And as far as bond, it ties back into bond and indebtedness in the town. A few years ago, we didn't have much at all in Southold town as a town. In the last few years, the town board bought a number of different parcels, and some to provide for affordable housing opportunities. So they didn't come out of CPF. The town just bought land and had to borrow the money to pay for it. So these are not land preservation purchases per se. They're for municipal purposes.
Yes.
So we've had some rather large capital expenses in the last few years. The town bought the bank building there, as a big capital expense for our operations. And we're in the process of moving the town clerk over there because it's a much better space there in the bank building. So we're looking at capital debt as a real factor in how we make decisions.
Yes.
The police department plays into that. But public safety, like I said, we have so many concerns. It's more than just a police officer responding to one thing. It's the whole regional approach to public safety.
But I was wondering, just with your time growing up here and becoming the town supervisor, I was just wondering, is there a place in Southold or one road, one beach, or one view that speaks to you the most?
Well, growing up in Cutchogue and Peconic, we were right on the line there. So I think you think you do draw on those childhood memories of going to the Causeway, or going to Goldsmiths Inlet in Peconic, because that's where you went. There was a lot of beaches. We have beautiful beaches here. You weren't going to drive all the way to Southold to go to a beach when you were here in Cutchogue. So I think there's certainly a lot of that. You have places where you go, and now we go with our grandchildren, and because they're close, they're most convenient, and those are the places that are special.
Yes.
But every community, we're blessed with a lot of that in town.
Everyone probably has their own special place.
They do, with their own waterfront access that they go and enjoy. So.
And then, just lastly, was there any last minute things? We touched on quite a bit.
The only thing I had here that we didn't really go over that much was there's a potential for a political sign law, and I know people get aggravated over all the political signs that go up, and of course the First Amendment is freedom of speech. You don't want to trample on that. However, the signs that are placed on public right-of-ways are not legal, and other towns have. Riverhead has a good model law where the political parties have to post a deposit with the town. So if people do leave signs all over the place after the election, there's money there to have the town spend money to clean the signs up off of right-of-ways and off of street corners and telephone poles and all that. Anything you want to put on your own property, you have at it. That's your right as an American to put up whatever sign you want. But you can't put it on public property.
Yes.
And that's what we're trying to get at. So to control that kind of and it's more than a nuisance, because when those signs blow away, you get a heavy windstorm, the wires get left in the ground, and then it becomes a public safety hazard because the lawnmowers cutting the verge are throwing those wires into traffic. They're getting flat tires. They become a safety hazard there because that just becomes garbage.
Yes. No, definitely. But I want to thank you for taking the time to come on the podcast again. It was a real pleasure to talk with you, and all the work that you're doing and time and effort it takes to run a town. So thank you so much for coming in.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's good to get the word out. A lot of people say, "Oh, you need a publicist," because nobody knows what we do really day to day. And they might see something and have an interest in one thing or another, and we always encourage people. We're going through that now with the Village of Greenport. Send people to our committees, so when there's vacancies, they'll know whether they want to be on town committees. Get more people engaged. It's really important.
Definitely. But
so thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 136 with Southold Town Supervisor Al Krupski. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.